afternoon again. Ken Bernstein, former city planning and officer of historic resources. What's before you is a nomination for Times Square Square, historically the headquarters of the Los Angeles Times. Cultural Heritage Commission recommendation was that the nomination met two of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance criteria. First, for its direct association with the prominent Chandler family, particularly Harry Chandler, Norman Chandler, Dorothy Buffum Chandler, and Otis Chandler, and their significant role in the evolution of the Los Angeles Times to a newspaper of national acclaim. And then secondly, for its architecture as a excellent example of Art Deco, modern and late modern architectural styles, as well as a significant work of three master architects, Gordon Kaufman, Roland Crawford, and William Pereira. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, we've got a lot of public comment cards here, so if you can hang out, perhaps we will ask you to address some of the questions that are raised after we exhaust it. We've got 28 speakers who have 1 minute each, so we ask you to be lined up and ready to go so we can get through this smoothly. I'll name off 3: Thomas Nagano, Ann Nguyen, and Rick Nordine. And after those 3, we'll have Alan Harris, Richard Chavez, and William Delvac. Let's do it.
The site of the Los Angeles Times in 1855 was the very first schoolhouse in Los Angeles. In 1937, it was awarded a gold medal at the Paris exhibition for architectural significance. And now it is probably Los Angeles' newest Hollywood soundstage and movie and television location.
Thank you.
Reset the clock. We're going to get 1 minute. Okay. My name is Rick Nordine. I'm a DTLA resident, an LA historian, and an author. I stand here today asking for support of the developer's plan to both preserve and develop the property as they had planned. What's that really mean? The eastern part of the property holds 2 wonderful structures that are the primary memorials to the Chandlers and to the LA Times. These should be preserved and restored. What's that mean? Very simply, you have to get rid of additions to a historic structure. So what I ask for is that they be allowed to be free to demolish the Pereira structure, to restore the 35 structure, and then to support the 1940 structure, and to have new development on the eastern part of the property, which supports a vibrant 24/7 mixed-use area, which is currently lacking in the Civic Center. I know Harry Chandler would appreciate the new development.
Thank you. Can you tell us your name?
Rick Nordine again.
Rick Nordine. Thank you, Mr. Nordine.
Good afternoon, Ann Nguyen, here today representing the Central City Association. We are here to oppose the proposed historic designation of the parking garage and the 1973 addition. We value the role that historic buildings play in the vitality of our city, and we're proud to have championed the adaptive reuse of many early 1900 downtown buildings. But we do not feel that the Pereira addition contributes in the same way as those early buildings and should not be deemed historic. It's an unwelcoming structure that closes itself off to the people on the street and detracts from the walkability of the Civic Center. And it masks the beauty of the neighboring original building on the east side, which we do support for designation. We're excited about the plans, and we urge you to support the historic designation of the original buildings, but not the Pereira addition and the parking garage. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alan Harris. I have the pleasure to live in a historic landmark building.
Did I call your name, Mr. Harris?
I'm sorry.
Did I call your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. You said with 3 in a row.
Okay. And you were 3? Got it.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for stopping you. Go on.
I live in a historic building approved by this council, the Higgins Building. This is a block from the subject property. Let's take a look at this neighborhood and its historic importance, and let's not ruin it.
Down the street a block, Historic Register, National Register of Historic Places, the Bradbury Building, Grand Central Market. Across the street from where I live, St. Viviana, 1876, National Register of Historic Places. And now today we are in the preeminent building in Los Angeles on the National Register of Historic Places. And about every TCM movie I see, this is the symbol of the city, and a block away, we want to preserve another crown jewel of this historic area in its totality. The Times Square building deserves preservation and support. They didn't tear down the Coliseum in Italy and put up a parking lot. We shouldn't do that for Los Angeles.
Thank you so much.
Hello, committee. I'm Richard Shea. I'm the applicant for the Historic Monument Monument. Before the committee today is Times Square, a landmark comprised of 3 interconnected buildings. They are the only privately owned buildings in the Civic Center, and for nearly a century were the symbol of the powerful Chandler family in the Los Angeles Times. The earliest structure, the 1935 Gordon Kaufman Times building, announced Los Angeles' arrival on the national stage. The third structure, erected in 1973, proclaimed that Los Angeles and the Times had achieved their shared destiny as a great American city, newspaper, and media company. Together, these buildings tell a living story of our city's identity, vision, and growth. Los Angeles needs and deserves to keep them intact, to tell the story of how the young city saw itself, how time and human effort helped Los Angeles realize that ambitious vision. This evolution in design is one of the essential roles that historic architecture plays in any city. The oldest building, opened in 1935 under publisher Harry Chandler, captures the provincial city's promise as a rising empire. Gordon Kaufman was known for grand traditional statements. For the Times, however, he used the fashionable Art Deco style to reflect the modern West's raw, muscular, physical power. But built into the very fabric of the building was the memory of the deadly 1910 bombing of that old Times building across on First Street, with a security-conscious design to protect the presses and workers from future attacks. The newest building is the Times Mirror headquarters, designed in 1973 by architect William Pereira for Otis Chandler, Harry Chandler's grandson, and publishing heir. 4 decades on, Los Angeles has grown enormously in population, power, and prestige. It was now a metropolis, as Pereira's design shows through its sophistication and technological advances and sheer self-confidence, reflecting the attitude of the city and of the enormous influence of Times Mirror, a media corporation like no other. But while Art Deco Kaufman building is now a beloved landmark, the late modern Peril building is currently unfashionable and therefore vulnerable to unsympathetic alterations or even demolition. As Christopher Hawthorne, appointed by the mayor as the city's first chief design engineer, has pointed out, it is when important buildings are about 40 years old, they are most in danger of being lost. Pereira, architect of the theme building at LAX, CBS Television City, and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, was the perfect choice to represent this new Los Angeles. With this late modern design, Pereira takes us beyond the minimalist boxes of the international style with a complex composition of stone, vertical, steel, and glass horizontals, and a mix of materials and solids and voids, lifting large volumes effortlessly into the air. It is also an incredibly urban design. It sits back from the sidewalk, creating the gift of a small plaza, a quieter public space marked off by columns and planters by noted landscape architect Robert Herrick Carter, a frequent Pereira collaborator. It is especially innovative in how it respects the physical and symbolic presence of its historic neighbor. In 1973, historic preservation was not yet a concern for most architects, yet Pereira gracefully defers to the older buildings. Even though it's several times larger than the Kaufman buildings, Pereira's design intentionally does not overwhelm. It is lower. Darker materials cause it to recede visually next to the lighter tone of the older buildings. Pereira's design steps back from the older building, both at ground level and on its upper stories. Its entry refers to the main Kaufman entry. The building illustrates Pereira's skill as a master architect who helped to shape this outline of a building that is symbolically, urbanistically, and creatively part of the life of the city. And the Peril building has recently enjoyed a fascinating modernization, without a single stone being moved as the sun moves across the sky. Skidmore, Owing, and Merrill's new federal courthouse sends moving bars of light across Peril's dark facade. The city evolves old and new working together. I encourage the committee to approve the Cultural Heritage Commission's designation to designate the Times Mirror Square. It is an important step on the path to creating public policy which seeks to preserve and restore and repurpose our city's past, making us the richer for it.
Thank you.
Honorable council members, Bill Delmack on behalf of the owner of the complex, Ani. And with me are historic resources.
So, Mr. Delbeck, you're speaking on behalf of the owner, not Ms. Holly?
On behalf of the owner, Ani.
All right, thank you.
Should I proceed now? Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I won't take all the time. Thank you. Allotted. Ani plans to rehabilitate the historic part of the complex. The 1935 original building, the Times building, the plant building, and the mirror building. It proposes, which is not before you today, the demolition of the executive building designed by Pereira and the parking structure. The city's Office of Historic Resources concluded that the building, so-called Peril building, was not in fact significant for its associations with Peril, which is exactly what our expert concluded. We provided a few brief photographs, both submitted in advance and then handed out. You can see the primary historic building on the first sheet. The second sheet shows the evolution of the complex. The historic part being along Spring Street, and the much later addition of the executive building and the parking structure along Broadway. And as you'll see from this one aerial, the executive building is pushed into and on top of the Times building, obscuring it and in fact removing part of the original facade. The view from the corner shows just how the building is not compatible with the rest of the complex. I'd like to note, very interestingly, there was a master plan proposed by Pereira which did not attach the building. It left a passageway or paseo and then proposed the tower behind. And again, while the project is not before you today, what would result if that project is approved is a passageway, building separated, and towers to provide much needed housing. We have a very simple request. In moving forward on the designation, we ask that you exclude from the designation the executive building and parking structure. We'd be pleased to reserve time to answer questions or if you'd like to hear from our expert.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, I've got Suzanne Holly, Linnea Cordiero, Brigade, Doug Summers.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Holly. I'm from the Downtown Center Business and Community District, and I'm here to oppose the historic designation of Pereira addition to the Los Angeles Times building. The structure is not worthy of such a designation, as you've heard, and its preservation will prevent the development of much-needed housing downtown. While I fully support the efforts to preserve the historic Los Angeles Times building, the plant building, and the mirror building, which are all over 70 years old, the 1973 Pereira addition and parking garage are much newer with architectural features that are not only inconsistent with, but actually detract from the original cultural landmarks. We strongly urge the committee to exclude from the historical designation the Pereira addition. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Summers. I'm with QA Assembly Lines Fitters, Los Angeles. I represent 1,000 hardworking journeymen and women in the fire protection business. We oppose the historic cultural designation of 1970 Pereira building. The building was added decades after the other historic structures were built. It has no significant architectural or functional features. Instead, the proposed development will benefit many people, including local workers. Ani has a great track record of hiring local workers and a strong commitment with the skilled trades. We should support rather than impede such efforts. Please listen to your local workforce and do not grant an historic cultural status to the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Diaz, Shamari Davis, Jordan Ceccartelli. Yes.
Hi, I'm William Pereira.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I'm
First time. I'm a downtown resident, Pan American Moss. I moved downtown because of historic work and what is downtown LA. I didn't even know it existed until I worked at the LA Times. I'm here to support the inclusion of Times Square in the list of historic cultural monuments. I think it's really important. I think we need to weigh this sometimes against. It's not just about jobs. It's not just about money. It is about preserving what makes this distinct and wonderful. It's great about that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Shamari Davis. I'm a business rep for IBPW Local 11, the National Brotherhood of Electrical Workers here in Los Angeles County. We represent about 12,000 workers, and we are here to oppose designating the 1970s Pereira building as a historical cultural monument. Not because we don't respect history, but because they are really keeping the project germane to the main part of the LA Times. They're only talking about tearing out the Peril building. That's where the new tower is going to go, and we think that definitely fits in with LA City planning. Ani has a really incredible project, incredible history with the trades. They've done good jobs and supplying good jobs to Angelinos, and we want to make sure we support very good developers that are good to the community, that create career pathways for folks in the LA City area. We've always had a community benefit agreement and local hiring with all of their projects, and we want to continue that. So please support that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jordan Shakatelli. I'm here on behalf of the Sheet Metal Workers Local 105 to request that the 1970s Pereira building not be included in the historic cultural designation for the complex. As someone who works in Los Angeles, I want to see our vibrant areas develop because development means jobs for our members. A high-quality builder like Ani builds new apartments and retail space that also creates quality construction jobs. I urge the community to reflect the values of LA workers and residents and not impede the future development of the site. Thank you very much.
Zach Strasters, Jose Pina, and Godfrey Witcher.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Diaz. I'm here with Plumbers Local 78 from Los Angeles. I'm here to oppose the historical cultural designation of the 1970s Pereira building. This location has the potential to provide thousands of good-paying construction jobs and much-needed housing in the area. These jobs will provide hard-working men and women with good-paid careers that will help them provide for their families, pay for their health care, and contribute to our local economy and making it stronger than ever. For the potential jobs and 1,100 housing units, please do not grant historic local status to the building. Thank you.
Good evening, council. To my friends on council, good to see you again. Happy Thanksgiving since I missed you. I want to point out here that it was staff with the Arms Organization. My apologies, councilman. I want to point out that Alan Hess with the Architectural Historical Organization argued that Pereira did not intend for the 70s era addition to the Times complex to be a standalone monument. By their own words, instead wanted to respond to the older buildings in urban context in an appropriate way. California Housing Partnership estimates that LA County needs an additional 568,000 affordable housing units in order to meet the demand of its lowest income renters. While the findings of LOS's 2018 homeless count indicate that we're moving in the right direction, we must remember that the steps we've taken thus far are small compared to the work ahead. Despite containing only 3% of the total U.S. population, LA County still holds nearly 10% of the country's homeless population. People around the world are looking to Los Angeles for compassionate leadership and innovation in solving this human rights crisis. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jose Pina with Creed LA, and I'm here opposing the historic cultural designation of the 1970s Pereira building. Protecting history through historic cultural designations is important for our city, but these designations should not be used as an instrument to prevent good development. Good development means good paying jobs and benefits for our local economy and revenues. And in this case, Ani has a proven track record of providing these benefits to workers and to the city. We hope that this committee will prevent the use of historic cultural designations to block much needed development and housing to our city. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Godfrey Oshiro with Creed LA, and like others, I request that you do not include the Peril building as a HCM. I think there is sufficient evidence that the building does not fit the designation. HCM, I believe, should mean something, and if we designate buildings all willy-nilly, I think it loses its value, and especially where it's blocking future development. We can and should blend the past with the future, but not through a building whose historical significance is down.
Thank you. Robert Polito, Jay Bradford, Leah Correa, Pedro, Marcelo Lavala.
Good afternoon. My name is Rod Polito. I'm with the Arms Organization, and I'm here opposing this historic or cultural designation of the 1970s Pereira building. Los Angeles is in a housing crisis. The cost for housing is out of control, and there are not enough homes and apartments for our residents. This location has the potential to hold over 1,100 housing units, yet these homes are in danger of not being built. We need to design our communities based on our immediate needs, not needs of the past. And our immediate need today is housing. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay, and I'm here from PLA to oppose the historical cultural designation for the 1970s Pereira building. In determining historical cultural status for the complex, we can look at all the buildings separately rather than as a block. The two earlier buildings certainly fit as historical landmarks. However, the Pereira building has no significant architectural or functional features. In this case, building a new housing project makes more sense. According to the mayor of our city, we need 100,000 additional units to support LA's population. Let's not limit our efforts to meet half the goal through the historical cultural designation on the site that has such amazing potential to add 1,100 new housing units. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Marcello Babla of the Los Angeles Conservancy. The Conservancy supports the nomination. We urge PLUM to recommend nomination. Times Square is significant architecturally and for the many generations of history with the Chandler family and as the Times complex tracked the evolution of the growth of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Luffman, Charlie Canal, Irma, Glendana, Shadkin.
Good afternoon again, commissioners. The Art Deco and modern, I'm sorry, Stephen Luffman. There you go. The Art Deco and modern architecture is easy to like. To some people, the architecture of William Pereira is an acquired taste. That doesn't make it less historic and significant. For those who do not appreciate the architecture of the newer buildings, I'm sure even they would appreciate the culture as a historic cultural monument that it represents. It represents a paper that endorsed an African-American mayor for the first time. It represents a paper that hired reporters of color to report on neighborhoods that they never covered before while they occupied the other older, beautiful Art Deco buildings. I urge you to endorse this HCM as is. This is a very historic group of buildings. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Carno, and I'm here on behalf of over 30,000 members of United States, the Hospitality Workers Union, to support staff's recommendation the entire LA Times Mirror complex be preserved, including the Pereira edition. Many of our members work in locations designed by William Pereira, including USC's campus, the Beverly Wilshire, and formerly the Counter Restaurant LAX, which is certainly designated by the city. The loss of the Pereira edition would mean the destruction of a vivid symbol of our city's rise to global metropolis. The edition under Otis Chandler is also a symbol of transformation in LA Times to a paper that told the story of all Angelinos and rising social movements locally and around the world. Most recently, Times reporters made history themselves when staff at the LA Times voted overwhelmingly to unionize. No single event so symbolizes the transformation of Los Angeles from anti-union fashion to progressive beacon. Who would be a tragedy if Los Angeles traded history in exchange for nothing more than another glassy slab of luxury housing few hundred planners will be able to afford.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Dana Shovelin. I'm here to support the historical of the whole complex, including the William Pereira building. We're here at Disney for the last 30 years, and there used to be a William Pereira building on the site. What I've seen in my 30 years of working at Disney and buildings being torn down and buildings coming back up, historical buildings. I know, you wave your hands like that, but it still doesn't make it not happening. And now, those buildings that were built 15 years ago are going to be torn down again. So please, please take staff recommendation and support the whole building as a historical.
Thank you. Jose Galindo, Harry Chandler, Fatima Murieta.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the LA City Council. My name is Jose Galindo, and I'm here for Unite here, Level 11, and I also work at USC, and I work at the LA Times building. I think it would be a travesty and something we need to really think about as far as sort of dispatching any notions of having the Peril building thrown away. We as Angelinos are too quick to look at progress and housing and the needs of our people, which are significant. But we also need to look at the treasures that we have here in LA, and the fact that this is a fellow Trojan that came out of USC, Mr. Pereira, left the treasure and heirloom that we need to seriously think about before we're too quick to dispatch and build some gaudy new housing. We need to leave treasures for our children, and also the fact that we have very few treasures and landmarks here in LA that we cherish. And being that I've been here 50 years with my family, we appreciate your time, and please don't give it a landmark. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Harry Chandler. My father, Otis Chandler, built the Pereira building. My grandmother, Dorothy, planned the music center in the Pereira building. My great-grandfather, Harry, built Kaufman. My grandfather, Norman, built the Crawford. As we think about what historical cultural monument status is, it's not just the architecture, it's also the history. So in those three buildings, I would argue, there are not another three buildings in the entire city next to the council chambers here that more history happened. So when you think about this, think not just about whether you like Pereira today, think about the history that happened in those buildings, the presidents, the stories, the coverage. That's where we need to be thinking about today. We also think about jobs. So I would argue that you keep the three buildings and you ask only to recreate a design that goes over the Pereira building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Fatima Murieta. I'm a member of Unite Here, and I'm here in support of this cultural historical monument nomination as a proud union member. The LA Times building is important not just because of the political importance of its owners, but because it told the struggles of Angelinos and helped make this city more just. Latino journalists in the 1970s and 80s in particular pushed the paper to reflect our community, and succeeded. For example, Ruben Salazar, reporter, he pushed the LA Times to view the Latino community. And he was the first to report the Chicano movement. Salazar's 1970s series, Who is Chicano?, discussed the evolving identity of Mexican Americans and their fight for political representation and justice. It inspired me as a young Latina learning about this in my social studies class, and when I passed by the building, it inspires me today. Please preserve our history in my entire LA Times complex.
Thank you. Susan Hunter. Susan Hunter, Azim, Hamalek, please don't disrupt the meeting again.
What?
Coalition to Preserve Los Angeles. I just want to point out that Ani is in fact building another project at 1100 South Street, where it's over 1,000 units and none of it is set aside for affordable. In downtown, we have between a 12 and 20% vacancy rate, so we actually don't need any more housing. And what we need to worry about is our communities and our environment. And by destroying that building, you'd actually be releasing carbons that are embedded in it. The best thing to do for this community is not to saturate us with more housing units that we don't need. The best thing to do for this community is to preserve that building in our history, so that when people do move in this area, they have a building that they can look at and say, I finally feel like I'm knitted into this community. You can adaptively reuse it. It can be salvaged, it can be saved. Every single piece of it should become something that future Andalinos can then have in their future daily life when they're grabbing a cup of coffee and walking by. So please do the right thing. And on a historic day, please do the right thing and make sure that we preserve this building. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Alan Malik, Planning Deputy with Council District 14. We respectfully ask the committee to approve in part the CHC's recommendations in awarding HCM status to the LA Times building, plant building, and mirror building, and overturning the CHC's recommendation in part by removing the William Pereira addition from the HCM nomination. We agree with the CHC's analysis that the Pereira addition is not architecturally significant and is not indicative of the work of a master builder. It's only significant in its association with the LA Times. Our office feels that by preserving the LA Times building, plant building, and mirror building, we will adequately preserve the legacy of the LA Times and its place in our city's cultural history, while allowing a potential project to move forward. And we do look forward to working with on this project and all this details on each. Thank you.
Thank you. Herman?
That's right. What the hell you people be doing in my city? Right. That's my LA Times building, Mo. You know better than that, Mr. Dawson. If it wasn't for the racist comments by the LA Times, we wouldn't have the LA building. And I'm here to preserve. Fuck the jobs, they're just promises. Fuck all your jobs, Mr. Dawson, they're just promises. Goddamn Angelinos and African Americans haven't had a goddamn job for any of their motherfucking projects, nigga. So what's up? You tell me what's up. You sent that proof from Mr. Huizar's office, Habib Jr. over here to talk about the bullshit? No. The building stays as it is, build within, make people work inside, outside, but don't build any higher to protect my federal building from a blind side. You get me? You got me? Because the color of my skin don't say stupid, fool.
Wayne?
Fuck Huizar been doing in my community.
So why we allow people from the communist Jose Huizar be speaking here today in this house of democracy now? We must preserve the black portion of the building. They want to tear it down because it's black like the chair. It's black like the heart of so many fools. You gotta save the Peril extension. I went up to the 10th floor, nigga. I went there for 6 hours to preserve it. I won. Now you trying to defeat me. It won't work. I will chain my goddamn ass to that motherfucking glass building if necessary. You took away my bank branch. My goddamn B of A is gone. But the memories will live on. So, fuck Jose Huizar and preserve the goddamn LA Times.
All right, that concludes public comment for this item. We'll begin our discussions first. You can join us back at the table.
Before he does, if I could ask the chair, for those of you who have not been to one of these meetings before, welcome. And it's yes, colorful language often from two individuals with some serious issues, but they come to every single meeting, every single council meeting, every single meeting.
sign an immunity
And now he's
Disrupting the meeting, Mr.
He
Spindler.
does it again.
I don't have to sign an FBI.
He's continuing to disrupt the meeting, so he should leave.
Sergeant, would you please escort Mr.
That's
Spindler
right.
from the meeting?
That's why you leave it. You leave it 2 years early.
Trust me, you're number 57.
And you got 69.
All right, so there's another one right there. So
Mr. Herman,
What?
if you would leave.
I didn't say
Mr. Herman,
it.
please share the room with Mr. Spindler.
All I said is the gentleman in the white shirt.
By the way, they often disrupt these meetings almost every single day.
Ow. Come on, Jay.
And they take the time away from the public to discuss this issue.
Moving as slowly as possible.
Part of my gentleman.
Order. I ask you to leave quietly.
Now with the Lord and Nancy.
You're a little talk too.
Lord and Nancy said my dad got defeated by those two morons.
You know you're on the way out, by the way. So welcome to your Los Angeles City Council Planning and Land Use Committee meeting. Thank you all for your patience. Give it a couple minutes. The pain will wear off. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know. I think it's like it's scarred for life.
It's time to deal. It looks like we've got a good amount of discussion here. For the record, we were joined some time ago by Councilmember Gil Cedillo from the 1st District to bring a full complement of committee members. Mr. Cedillo, if you have questions or comments on this matter, I'll start with you. You do not? All right. Anybody have questions or comments on this one? All right. Mr. Blumenfeld and Sir, Mr. Cedillo.
Yes, I sit here both as a member of this committee, but also as chair of housing. And so there's vexing questions for us. So how do we preserve the buildings that should be preserved, and how do we build that to reuse those buildings that must be built? I'm trying to reconcile that with recent debates and discussions around Airbnb. So it seems quite evident that we've finally come to the conclusion that we need housing. And so then the question is where, how? And it seems that in this instance we have found the perfect division to preserve the historic part, the first parts of the building, and then recognize that there's other representations of Pereira architecture, obviously, that are more significant and meet the criteria appropriately, while at the same time recognizing just the profound need for housing. Every day we grapple with this. We saw recently the efforts around Airbnb and the limits on those efforts to preserve housing, to build neighborhoods and community. It seems that it would be consistent, unto which to ask for consistency, to continue to advocate for housing in this instance. And so the perfect solution or resolution of all these competing interests is to bifurcate the site in part, preserve the older historic areas, and then take advantage of new opportunities so that the development is ongoing and living, and build the much needed housing and do so in the way presented and discussed by the anticipated architecture. So we can go with that type of motion and
Thank you so much, Mr. Cedillo, our Chair of Housing. Appreciate you weighing in with regard to our housing in the city of Los Angeles and the tough issues that we face here today. Mr. Blumenfeld.
Thank you, Doc. I certainly agree with Mr. Cedillo in terms of the tension that we have. While consistency is good, it's also the hobgoblin of small lines. But that being said, a question about preserving the history without the building. You know, what are the other tools that you would have if the third building were to be not historic, and if we were to make that move in that direction? What are the options that we would have to preserve that history, recognize that history, in addition to the preservation of the two buildings?
Thank you, Councilmember. Again, Ken Bernstein, Department of City Planning. Of course, what's before you today is a narrower question of whether the nomination does or doesn't meet historic cultural monument criteria. Separately from that, there is a project proposed for this site that's been going through our department's review process. There's an environmental impact report associated with that. And there would be opportunities as that project gets considered to look at other mitigation measures that could memorialize or interpret the history of the site and the Los Angeles Times as part of the approval of a project or a mitigation measure related to that. And so we can look at creative opportunities to interpret that history, either the architecture, William Pereira, and or the history of the Los Angeles Times and the Chandler family of the site if the building itself is not preserved.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at, is that if that third building is not preserved, that does not mean the history goes away. We still have opportunities through a different process than today to recognize that history, to interpret that history, to build that into the requirements for whatever is built, some sort of preservation or homage to that.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Blumenfeld. I believe we have additional comments from the venerable Mr. Gilcedillo.
Thank you, sir. First, let me applaud your leadership, and I look forward to working with you on this committee. But let me note that, as you just indicated, Mr. Bernstein, that recently we were involved in an effort at Roosevelt to preserve the high school, and it has a very tremendous history, very rich history. However, we were unable to do that. But we were able to seek a balance and a resolution, and in that effort we were able to establish, will establish a center. And so that center on site will collect the artifacts of the original building, serve as a place for us to preserve the history of Roosevelt. There are some facades and aspects to that building that are significant and that will serve as the landmark or the marker. And then on site we will have the center, which is envisioned as a center for the preservation of the history of Boyle Heights and Los Angeles. And so that's another way of, in many instances, of preserving the history of the site without actually preserving the actual building. I think that option makes itself available to the site. And then finally, I don't think it should be minimized, but that there are jobs that would be involved in creating the new housing. And those are union jobs. And so I have a record with the labor movement, and I'm pro-union and pro-worker, and pro-development, and I think there's the perfect mix in this instance with those factors considered. Thank you.
Mr. Linder.
Thank you very much. Well, first, I truly appreciate all the work of the staff and the commission on this very delicate issue. And it's critically important that we protect and preserve the history of Los Angeles in so many different aspects. And while what's before us isn't at what cost, the project itself and what may come in the future isn't technically before us yet either. Mr. Cedillo made great arguments for that, and I agree with all of them. But looking at what is really before us, this entire facility has tremendous significance. Not only in the way that it's been designed, but operationally and historic events. But that's not really what's before us either. And in fact, we had, and this is one of the most difficult that come before us in terms of issues on land use, is what do we ultimately decide to protect for our great-great-great-great-grandchildren for centuries to come, that we can look down and know years later, decades later, that we made the right decision on this body. And these decisions should not be taken lightly based on whoever an applicant or developer is or what they're proposing in the future. We have to look at the totality of each one of these locations and the significance and say, how do we make sure that we protect the right structures and facilities
while not protecting and blessing every single application that comes here, and looking at striking that balance. Because we can't do that either. In fact, I think it was just last year where we turned down a historic property, I think it was in Maryland, Monroe, where she was born. And we said, no, it's not enough to have a relationship. We want some other historic elements in terms of the actual architecture, not just what occurred perhaps under the roof. We needed a little more. Although the commission looks at it with a broader view, that's what they view. I think this body historically has said we need a little more than that, than the feel-good historians, which is critically important for preserving and protecting what we're losing every single day. In looking at this one, it's very delicate. But I looked at, again, the totality of where we look at all of these issues. And William Pereira, he was a different architect than the original building. His addition, as well as the garage, the staff for the commission actually ruled that there was no architectural historical significance. That was their finding on this. And that's something that I personally take into consideration very, very carefully. They did say there was a relationship with the Chandlers. They did go on to say that there was historical significance to what occurred certainly under the roof. But as it relates to specifically what's before us and what we've looked at and have done historically, and striking that balance and preserving what we should in those elements of this facility, I would support the recommendation to approve in part and deny in part the commission's recommendation and preserve what is truly the architectural significance. And I also, I like that although we can only do that as a suggestion, I like where Mr. Cedillo was going with it, that the building and whatever is brought there has something to capture what was done and what happened historically under that roof and who was there. I think it's very important. And so that's where my recommendation is.
Excellent. Well said, Mr. Englander. Mr. Price, anything on this?
No.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll second Mr. Englander's motion that we approve in part and deny in part.
And to clarify, council members, and the parking spot, yes.
That's right.
And then just for clarification, if planning department can clarify which address the Pereira building is, because there's 4 addresses that are listed for the committee agenda for purposes of the committee report.
All right, is there someone from planning that knows with this?
I don't want to read inaccurate information to the record, so we will provide that to you as we provide the findings. Yeah.
All right. All right, excellent. Hearing no objection of the order. Thank you so much, everybody who came to speak on this item, and Mr. Bernstein. That takes us to item number 10, I believe we got left.
Yes,